Hello and good evening, my beautiful friends and family, kings and queens. I hope that this has been a beautiful and a blessed day for you all. So, tonight I would like to talk about the transitional periods of life. When you are in transition, you are not quite where you were, but you're not quite where you would like to be in this life. All the greats of the Word of God all went through transition while they were on their way to the promises, to the destiny that God had in alignment for them. Let's start with Joseph. Joseph was in transition when his brothers sold him. He went into slavery. He was imprisoned. During the imprisonment, he was lied on. Basically he was basically lied on by the woman. She said that he had forced himself onto her. And in that transition, God used his giftings to make room for him, to put him in the palace. Let us look at Christ. Christ himself came down as a baby in a manger. And while he was in the manger, that was a transitional period. The Son of God came down into flesh. He was not quite where he was. He came from heaven, but not quite where he was going, because he had a mission to fulfill the purpose of heaven. He came to die for our sins. He came to be the ultimate sacrifice. And during the transitional period, his very essence was questioned. Who is this man? What has he come to do? He was stoned, he was beaten because he was in transition, but ultimately it led him to his ultimate purpose, which was to die upon the cross. Let's talk about Job. Job had it all. God stripped him of every single thing. In that transitional period, he was being tested. In the testing, everything was stripped for him, and the Lord allowed Satan to touch him, but he could not kill him. In that transitional period, his faith was being tested. He was not quite where he was, but not quite where he was going. And after the testing, that's when God restored him. Let's talk about David. David, on his way to kingship, he had to fight Goliath. He had to prove himself worthy to be king. He was chased by Saul. He was not quite where he was, but he was not quite where he wanted to be in the transitional period. After all the testing, after killing Uriah, after sleeping with Bathsheba and doing all the injustices, he was then called a friend of God. He was in transition. Let's talk about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, not quite where they were, but not quite where they were going. They were thrown into the fire. Because they would not bow down and worship other gods. But yet God stepped in during that season of transition only for them to be vindicated in the end. Daniel, he was in transition. He was thrown into the lion's den only once again to be vindicated by God. So during those times when we are in our transitional periods, it's often a time of testing. That's when God is seeing, are you learning what I am showing you, and are you putting the things that I am showing you into play? Are you mastering the lesson that you learned in the last season? That's when God will have you in transition. When the doors have not quite yet opened yet and you're in the hallway, you know that God has promised you something and you're desperately waiting in the hallway for the door to be open. But in that hallway, that's where the test is. That's when the obstacles are going to be thrown at you in the hallway. That's when, all the things that you thought that you conquered, that's when they're going to rear their head back up in the hallway, because the enemy knows that the door is about to open for you. So what he does when you're in that hallway, like I said, the time of testing, when you're in that hallway, that's when the enemy is going to throw all the things at you to see if you have mastered, if you are able to pass and go on to the next level. Just like in school, when when you are in the transitional period, when you're going from grade to grade, what do you have to do? You have to take a test, because you have to prove that you have mastered the last grade in order to pass to the next grade. That's the transitional period. You're not quite where you were, but you're not quite where you're going. And that could be a very awkward time. That could be a time where, like I said, you know that the promises are on the way, but yet it may look like nothing is happening in the natural. But in the spiritual realm, you know what you've been promised, but in the natural realm, everything is falling apart. That's the transitional period. That's the period when God is saying, okay, child, show me what you learned. Put it into play now. And if you pass those tests of the transitional period, that's when the doors open. That's when the blessings begin to pour out upon you, because now you showed God, Lord, I'm worthy of this next level. Lord, I'm worthy of the door opening, because not only have I mastered what you taught me in the last season, but after mastering it, I'm now putting it into play. It's not enough to have the wisdom, knowledge, and the understanding. You also have to put that into play. When I say that, you have to not only have these things in your heart, but they also have to speak. Like, if you learned in your last season, patience, right? God put you through so much testing in your last season, and a situation arises, and okay, the Lord is seeing, are you able to put that patience into play? Are you able to put the very thing that I've been training you for into play? And when you master that, and you've come to the situation where God is now saying, okay, show me your patience. Show me that you're able to withstand this trial. Show me that you're able to withstand the heartache. Show me that you're able to withstand the obstacle that I'm placing in your way. And after you do that, that's when the doors open. So it's not enough to learn the lesson, master the lesson. Now you have to put the lesson into play. Those are the transitional periods. And during that time, if you pass the test, if you pass the obstacles, that's when all the doors open for you. During the transitional period, that's when Satan is pulling out all the stops, because he knows that your next blessing, he knows that your next opportunity is right around the corner. So the fact that you're in transition, the fact that Satan has been pulling out all the stops, that is the announcement that your next level is here. With every new level, there is a new devil. So when these problems start to come, when you are now leaving from one level to the next, and chaos just starts to break loose, or problems just start to happen left, right, front, and center, most of the times it's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's because your next level is just right around the corner. And it's like, if you faint not in that transitional period, if you don't give up in that transitional period, if you don't get weary in that transitional period, that's when the blessings start to flow. Those attacks are announcing your next level. That spiritual warfare is announcing your next level. Those bad behind kids acting up, that's that's announcing your next level. You getting fired from your job, that is announcing your next level. You not getting the position, that is announcing your next level. Don't become weary when God has you in the hallway. Don't start to question your very existence when God has you in the hallway. Don't start to wonder, Lord, did I really see what you showed me when you're in the hallway? When you're in the hallway, that's the time that you begin to praise. That's the time that you begin to worship. Because when you worship and you praise, that's letting God know, Lord, I'm ready for the next level. Lord, everything is falling apart, but I trust you. Lord, everything seems like it's gotten so chaotic, but I trust you in this season of transition. I trust you even as Joseph was thrown into the pit, even as he was brought to the jail. He was still trusting God. He was in his period of transition. And when you are in the period of transition, just like Joseph, he then had to tap into his gifts. He had to tap into the giftings that God gave him. And that's what took him out of the season of transition. While in jail, he was able to interpret dreams. He was able to interpret visions. He tapped into what God gave him while he was in transition. And what did it do? It made him the master of all. It made him the top ranking for the palace. That's what it did. Because while he was in the hallway, he mastered his gifts. While he was in the hallway, he did not give up. He did not lose hope. He was in the hallway in the pit. And when he got out of the hallway, all doors opened for him. Everything was at his disposal. Why? Because he didn't give up while he was in the hallway. Worship while you're in the hallway. Glorify God while you're in the hallway. You see the door. The door is right around the corner. You could see it, but the door is not quite open as yet. But I want to say that worship is the key. Praise is the key. Thanksgiving is the key. Joy is the key that opens your next door. So while you're in the hallway, don't complain. While you're in the hallway, while you're in these transitional periods, don't look back and say, oh boy, don't be like the Israelites that complained and wanted to go back to Egypt. They were in their hallway, and because they got frustrated in the hallway, because they missed the meat of Egypt, because they missed the past, they were willing to forfeit their blessing because they missed what was in the past. They missed the meat of Egypt. They missed the meat of their oppressors while God was providing bread in the desert, while God was providing the manna in the desert. They were so wanting to go back to the old level because they got tired of the transitional period. They got tired in the hallway. So because they couldn't see the door around the corner, or they saw it, but they didn't have the key to the door, or they thought that the door was not going to open, they wanted to go backwards. They wanted to backtrack and go back to the oppressors. They wanted to backtrack and go back to their bondage. Don't do that in this season. The door is right around the corner. See what God is providing for you in the transitional period. The Israelites didn't see that. They wandered longer than they had to because they didn't see the blessing in the transitional period. They didn't see that while I'm in transition, my shoes are not wearing out. While I am in transition, I am not hungry. While I am in transition, my clothes aren't wearing out. While I'm in transition, though I'm not eating the meat of Egypt, though I'm not eating the finest things of Egypt, God was still providing manna. God was still providing